Reilly was a great sportsman. I always say he was playing rugby when I went to prison and still playing when I came out. He is also one of the world's foremost businessmen. But for me, he is something more important, a trusted, a true and proven friend of the democratic South Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a huge privilege and indeed a pleasure, along with my partners KPMG and Barclays Bank, to introduce the 2006 recipient of our Lifetime Achievement in Business Award, the outstanding Sir Anthony O'Reilly.
All you can say after that is Jesus. And to talk about a sense of relief tonight, I was watching Ian's face as the night went on, wondering whether in fact the business of the day in the Dáil would preclude the Tánaiste from being with us tonight. And when Michael came in and sat down, you could see Ian thought, God is good. The stars are in alignment, everything is. And I was thinking to myself, God, I remember a night years ago, and there was a Labour Party dinner at which Conor Cruise O'Brien was the featured speaker. And Conor Cruise O'Brien absolutely, simply failed the show. He just didn't turn up at all. So the chairman of the evening, who didn't particularly like Conor Cruise O'Brien, got up at the appointed time and said, normally, is the custom to say the speaker needs no introduction. Tonight, he said, it's particularly appropriate as the bugger isn't even here. So, happily, Michael is here and has defined for us, in his presence, in his words, in his conduct, and in the courage he gives to every businessman in this country, what business is about. And I was just thinking, I heard Peter Drucker mentioned earlier tonight. No evening about business is complete without Drucker. But my hero in business is Groucho Marx. And he was asked once to define business success. He said, the secret of business success is honesty and sincerity. And he said, if you can fake that, you've really got it made. So it seems a hell of a lot of fakers here tonight. Ian, thank you for that generous introduction to a career which seems to have passed, I have to say, with astonishing and disconcerting rapidity. My mother would have loved you for those words you spoke about me, and my father simply would not have believed them. Two stories illustrate the rather fleeting nature of fame. And fame is something that should be approached very cautiously and with a degree of circumspection. The first was in an Ireland v Wales game about 10 years ago in Cardiff. I was bringing my wife to her first ever Welsh Rugby International, and there are simply no internationals anywhere in the world like Welsh Rugby Internationals in Cardiff. As we walked into the Arms Park, there were two old Welshmen, one young and one old, sitting on a wall watching the passing caravan. And the older chap said to the younger. "Well, there he is," he said. "There he is. There's the boyo." And the young chap looked puzzled and didn't recognize me. And he said, who is he?" The older chap said, "Well," he said, "he used to be Tony O'Reilly." And as the Taoiseach said in his elegant Latin, "Sic transit gloriam," as the Jesuits would say. By the way, Michael, did you know that SJ does not mean Society of Jesus? It means slightly Jewish. So next time you're looking at a Jesuit, remember that. The second story focuses on keeping things in perspective, not allowing yourself to be overwhelmed by events or by the view that people have on your performance in those events. And it's one about the Colossus, that great vertiginous figure that played rugby for Ireland, the figure of Moss Keane, the great Kerry second row forward who played with the unsinkable Willie John McBride in the 70s and 80s for a very powerful Irish team. Moss was a bit of a loner, but was nursing a lonely pint one night in a pub. Not a pint, I might say, of what you'd like him to be nursing, Morris, but a pint in a pub. And a very attractive woman entered in, sees Moss, and she approaches him, and she said, "Tell me," she said, "are you a Moss Keane?" He said, "I am." She said, "Are you a Moss Keane, the football player?" "Yes," he said, "I am." She said, "You're a marvellous man. What size are you?" He said, "I'm 6'5.5". "Is that so?" She said, 6'5.5". "And tell me, are you built in proportion?" He said, "Madam, if I was, I'd be 9 feet tall." So you've got to be very careful in understanding your own publicity. An event happened to me of a similar type when I was with the H.J. Heinz Company, then chairman and CEO, and it was about the purchase of a company in Ireland who produced seafood products called Lett Brothers in County Wexford. There were 4 brothers. They were very important. And on the appointed day, the bankers for the deal, not, I have to say at the time, Barclays, but other bankers asked me to appear to declaim upon the merits of the H.J. Heinz Company, which I did with a certain élan. I piled hyperbole upon the head of hyperbole upon the head of hyperbole. I sketched the Elysian pastures of profit that would grow before us if they became partners with us in the future expansion in Europe. I ended, I thought, on a rather high note. And the 4 brothers looked at me. And one of them, the appointed member, Jim, leaned across. And a slow smile spread across his face. And he said, "Jesus, Tony," he said, "the lies we could tell together." These 3 stories coalesce in my mind to give me a certain feeling of wonderment and concern about the pace of change and the very nature of fame. The great poet John Milton observed once that fame, he said, is the spirit that the last spur of the mind, the last infirmity of noble mind. And so as I look at the incredible prosperity assembled here tonight, and the glittering economic future that beckons this country and all of you, I think of the 500,000 people at least who were forced to emigrate in the 50s and the 60s because our country offered them no hope and no jobs. An extraordinary Irishman who has been much celebrated here tonight, but which I would again like to focus on, will be having his 90th birthday party on next Saturday night, and I will attend it with great pride, and he is Dr. Ken Whitaker. Ken Whitaker was then the secretary in the early 60s of the Department of Finance. And he wrote a seminal piece in the foreword to the government's first program for economic expansion at the beginning of the 60s. And it said, our version of history. Note, not history, but our version of history has made us think of freedom as an end in itself, and of independent government like marriage in a fairy story as a solution of all ills. Freedom is useful only in proportion to the use you make of it. And it's sad to think that at a time when our religious figures are at their height, that our productive vigors should be so low. That was Ken Whitaker's clarion call in 1960. That was the end of the insane economic notion of Sinn Féin, ourselves alone. Not the political Sinn Féin, the economic notion of Sinn Féin, ourselves alone. The lunacy of economic self-sufficiency as an end in itself. So we opened our frontiers to capital, to people, and to ideas. Guts and gravel. I love that idea of Sean Quinn in '73. We set up the IDA. We embraced the outside world enthusiastically. And today, we have the highest rate of foreign capital investment of any country in Europe, and a rate of growth over the last 10 years per capita which is 4 times that of Great Britain. Now, that's what I call true freedom. Ken Whitaker is the principal architect of this. He's not the sole operator of a change of mind, change of heart, change of empathy, as you perceive. Many other things impinge upon it. Our joining Europe being a critical one. The fact that we have low interest rates being equally catalytic. But may I, on your behalf, offer him all good wishes for his 90th birthday on next Saturday, and note with great admiration the fact that he and Mary were married last year. The night's been long. I think it's been wonderful to see the great honour you've paid to the Quinn Company, starting from nothing, a hole in the ground, and building it to a company today estimated to be worth $5 billion. Maurice Pratt, whose fairness and whose common sense and articulate capacity to analyse a problem was such an important part of our work at Aircom. In fact, at that table was Maurice Pratt, David McRedmond, and myself, and John Conroy came over, who was also on the board with us, and said, Jesus, he said, is this a committee meeting of the board of Aircom? I said, no, it's not. This is far too friendly to be Aircom. Many years ago, I hosted a pre-Christmas party, a bit like this, in New York for Brendan Behan. Brendan Behan, as you will remember, was a writer with a drinking problem. Or rather, as he put it himself, he was a drinker with a writing problem. But he expressed something of the Ireland of those years when he approached the platform when I asked him to speak slightly unsteadily, eyed the crowd rather dyspeptically, didn't particularly like them very much, and said to them as follows. He said, I'm going back to Dublin for Christmas, And I'm going to tell all your friends and relations in Ireland how well yous are doing and how much money yous are making over here in America and how far up the social ladder yous have all climbed. And Jay-Z said, that'll put them in right bad form for Christmas. If poor Brendan were alive today, he would be amazed to find that Dublin is now much more prosperous than New York, despite David's claims to the contrary. And in this evening, it is clear that a glittering future faces this country and points the way towards further prosperity in an expanding world economy. We're a very open economy, a small, open economy, and so the world economy is enormously important to us. So I thank you, Ian, for a most glamorous evening and for letting me wander down some part of memory lane, particularly with that 18th century early film that you showed of the lions in 1955. I think that film was speeded up slightly. The exciting message we all share here tonight is that the future for Ireland, for Europe, and for the world can and will be even better. I'll end again on a Brendan Behan story. Some of you have heard it before, but it is, in a way, very appropriate for an award such as this, at a time like this, and looking back on many years, which, as I say, have passed so fleetingly before my eyes. It's the story of Brendan, who went after, innumerable cures, to his final cure in a clinic down in Cork. And he came back from it, and I met him, being a friend of his at the time, and I said, Brendan, how was your visit to Cork? He says, it was fantastic. He said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, at this clinic, he said, unlike any other clinic anywhere in the world, he said, the nurses and the doctors drink with the patients. He said, nobody's ever been cured, but Jesus, the time just flies by. And that is my feeling. My thanks to Ian, my thanks to Business Finance, and to your first editor, Nick Leonard, who was such a great friend to me and such an exciting person to work with, and to all of you with this glittering future in front of you. I was talking today to somebody about tonight, and I was saying, very few people in this room have ever experienced a recession. And it's a thought that we should share, perhaps. And it's a thought that we should plan for. But I think we have the skill, I think we have the capacity, I think we have the confidence, I think we have the structure, and we have the ability to outperform the world. A country which was the poorest in Europe 25 years ago is now per capita the richest in Europe. It makes me immensely proud to be Irish. Thank you.